The Myers-Briggs assessment is one of the most popular instruments in the world, despite its lack of scientific validation. People find obvious benefit to utilizing it for descriptions of themselves and others and look to it for insights regarding their relationships, career suitability, or other areas of personal development. Here at MindHub, we like to encourage people to understand both themselves and others based on their observed behaviors without making too many assumptions. However, when we look at the MBTI type's strengths and weaknesses, we can make a sound hypothesis about the likely behaviors or drives you would expect to see looking at each type. When you look at MBTI types through this more behavioral lens, you see how some common stereotypes of each type might break down. The MBTI uses 4 dichotomies to categorize people. They are introversion versus extroversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. The introversion or extroversion dichotomy loosely correlates to the vertical axis of the MindHub, with extrovert personalities showing drives located in the top hemisphere and introverted personalities typically displaying drives on the lower hemisphere. The judging and perceiving axis is correlated with our reactive to proactive horizontal axis, so we'd expect J-types to have drives on the left half of the MindHub circle and P-types to have drives on the right half. There are also correlations between MindHub's inner drives and preferences for introversion and intuition. The tendency to have inner drives can only be assessed if you look at the cognitive functions of MBTI types, as types with strengths which are introverted or intuitive are not always obvious from the 4-letter MBTI dichotomy code alone. Inner drives can also be predicted by a measure of assertiveness or turbulence, with more turbulent personalities of any type having a higher likelihood to have an inner drive. In MindHub, we believe inner drives develop due to failed aims, and any personality can develop inner drives after disappointments. Thinking versus feeling and intuition versus sensing are less directly correlated to MindHub's circle, but we can see how they are represented in the combinations of displayed drives. Now let's look at the MindHub for each of the types. ENFJ are extrovert, intuitive feeling perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the giver. In MindHub, they are social reactive personalities who tend to display ambition, attachment, and sometimes lust as primary drives. Interestingly, the giver in our system is unlikely to have compassion as a primary drive, though they can be drawn to social enterprise. The ENFJ is more likely to focus on giving time and energy to the larger society and to their close ones when they are recognized or revered. They tend to grow toward ego or greed drives, depending on their environment or successes. They are unlikely to have inner drives, unless they are turbulent. INFJ are introverted, intuitive feeling judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the counselor. In MindHub, they are introverted reactive personalities who often have attachment and compassion, and can have ambition and security drives. Though they can be values-driven individuals, they can be careful or rather passive in accumulating information or taking action in their environment. Of the personalities, they are amongst the least likely to display impulsive behaviors, unless unhealthy. They are more likely to have an inner drive, and of the inner drives, most likely to have principles. ENFP are extrovert, intuitive feeling perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the champion. In MindHub, they are social proactive personalities who are most likely to display ego, lust, greed, and boredom as primary drives, with boredom the most common drive. They may develop ambition as a primary or secondary drive. Though, when this is the case, they suffer the tensions of having boredom and ambition polar drives. Though the stereotype of the champion seems happy-go-lucky and pro-social, MindHub shows that the ENFP's tendency for expansion in ideas and plans can lead to undirected behavior, impulsivity, and even vice. They are unlikely to have inner drives. INFP are introverted, intuitive feeling perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the idealist. Their stereotype is a daydreamer who is quite happy to live in a fantasy bubble of their own imagining. In the MindHub system, they are introverted proactive personalities very likely to display primary compassion and boredom, and somewhat likely to have greed. They are often curious and acquisitive individuals. Though they are touted to be ideational, they are somewhat less likely to develop the inner drive we call principles than their INFJ cousins. They are also quite proactive, meaning they can display spontaneous behavior and are very unlikely to develop reactive drives. ENTP are extroverts sensing feeling perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the visionary, and their stereotype is entrepreneurial. In MindHub, an ENTP would likely display ambition, lust, ego, greed, or boredom as primary drives. They are likely to be doing many activities at once and may have the same ambition and boredom polar drive tension as ENFPs. However, ENTPs are more likely to have greed and lust drives than ENFPs. The combination of boredom and greed can create a personality strongly attracted to finding creative means to achieve personal gains, but which can be inconsistent in energy and progress. ENTPs are among the least likely of the types to develop inner drives. INTP are introverted, intuitive thinking perceivers. 16 personalities nicknames them the thinker. They are often stereotyped as a scientist. In MindHub, they are introverted perceiving types and commonly display boredom, compassion, and sometimes greed and lust. Like their INFP cousins, they are driven by curiosity or by the acquisition of knowledge in their fields of interest, but tend to acquire new information inconsistently or unsystematically. Their proactive tendencies make them open to experimentation, which they are able to do alone. They are among the most individualistic of personalities and unlikely to develop either reactive drives or inner drives unless unhealthy. If they do develop an inner drive, it tends to be regret. ENTJ are extroverts sensing thinking judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the commander. In MindHub, ENTJ are likely to have ambition, attachment, lust, and ego, and may have security and greed. ENTJs are drawn strongly to leadership positions and often provide structure for organizations or projects. This combination of drives can push these personalities toward not only consistent work but overwork, pursuing achievements or acknowledgement for themselves and their teams. They are unlikely to have inner drives. INTJ are introverted, intuitive thinking judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the mastermind. By stereotype, they are considered the most strategic of personalities and in memes are often portrayed as chess masters. In the MindHub, INTJ are introverted reactive personalities who tend to show attachment, security, and ambition, with some likelihood to develop compassion. Given their reactiveness, they can be passive or inert in uncertain situations. They have a greater tendency to develop inner drives, particularly revenge. ESFJ are extroverts sensing feeling judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the provider. They are also very social and reactive. They are most likely to show ambition, attachment, and security drives in their behaviors, with some possibility of lust, ego, or compassion drives as a primary or secondary. The strong emphasis on well-being and stability is usually centered on close people, but can scale to whole communities and manifests as an instinct to provide structure for social groups or institutions. Proactive or impulsive behaviors as well as inner drives are uncommon. ISFJ are introverted sensing feeling judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the nurturer. In MindHub, the ISFJ is introverted and reactive and are most likely to display attachment and security, with some likelihood to develop compassion or ambition. Their stereotype is that they give in any way they can and are deeply unselfish. In MindHub, they are relatively more likely to nurture their close ones and less likely to show the same level of care for strangers unless they have chosen a caring profession. They are also likely to prioritize their own security rather than the interests of the wider society. They are somewhat unlikely to develop inner drives, but can be drawn to develop primary or secondary principles. ESTP are extroverts sensing thinking perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the doer. In MindHub, they are proactive and social personalities and are likely to display lust, ego, greed, and boredom. Their stereotype as a pragmatic problem solver likely stems from their tendency to respond quickly to new information and situations. ESTPs are very unlikely to have any primary or secondary reactive drives and so are often unaware of the consequences of their actions both for themselves and others. ESTPs are unlikely to have inner drives unless turbulent, but can develop any of the inner drives when disappointed. ISTP are introverted sensing thinking perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the craftsman. The stereotype of the ISTP is an action hero or a cowboy who is resourceful under pressure. In the MindHub, these are introverted and proactive personalities who likely have greed and boredom and often have ego and lust. The combination of boredom and greed creates a personality who is likely to want to create real things in real time, but who may struggle to plan or work consistently toward desired goals. They may develop inner drives if frustrated and tend toward the development of resentment when unhealthy. ESFP are extrovert sensing feeling perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the performer. Their stereotype is that they are the life of the party, which may well be the case. In MindHub, they are amongst the most proactive and social personalities, and they are most likely to display lust, ego, greed, and boredom. The lack of reactive drives can show a lack of awareness for the consequences of their actions on both self and others. They are unlikely to have inner drives unless turbulent, but can develop primary or secondary resentment. ISFP are introverted sensing feeling perceivers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the composer, and their stereotype is a gentle artist. In the MindHub, they are introverted and proactive and likely to display compassion, boredom and greed, and somewhat likely to have ego. The combination of compassion and with either greed or ego can lead to unpredictable social effects, as they can spontaneously become very close to others or retreat from individuals and groups equally suddenly. They can be somewhat mysterious to others due to the mix of proactive and inner drives. They are among the most likely to have inner drives and most likely to develop more than one. ESTJs are extrovert sensing thinking judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the supervisor. In MindHub, they are reactive and social personalities that are likely to have ambition, attachment, and security as primary drives. They are more unlikely to develop proactive drives than their ENTJ cousins and the least impulsive of the extrovert personalities. ESTJs are more traditional and relatively more risk-averse than other types that display ambition. They are unlikely to have inner drives and unlikely to test as turbulent personalities. ISTJ are introverted sensing thinking judgers in the MBTI. 16 personalities nicknames them the inspector. Their stereotype can be that they are quite robotic and mercurial. In MindHub, they are introverted and reactive personalities likely to display security, attachment, and ambition. They prefer structure and order both in work and in their private lives. They are somewhat likely to develop compassion and ego as a secondary drives. However, if the development of these drives interfere with their protocols, they are unlikely to become permanent. They are one of the most likely types to have inner drives, particularly revenge and principles.